Good evening, and welcome to Estate Planning Considerations as You Age, hosted by MPT and featuring Shari Fleming of the Law Office of Shari Fleming and Malika Moore of Aging and Amazing. We're so happy that you guys are able to join us this evening to answer a repetitive question. This webinar will be recorded and it will be sent out to all those who have registered and available through YouTube. This presentation will take approximately an hour, and we will have a Q&A at the end of the session. Please utilize the comment sections for any questions. To introduce our presenters, Shari Fleming received her undergraduate degree from Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, graduating magna cum laude. She received her law degree from the University of Maryland School of Law. Shari's post-law school education includes achievement of the designations of accredited estate planner and chartered advisor in philanthropy. She is the principal of the Law Office of Shari Fleming and the Plan Giving Officer for Bowie State University. Shari founded the Our Legacies Matters community and was named the Daily Record's 2021 Leadership in Law Generation JD honorees. Malika Moore is an aging life care professional and licensed clinical social worker in DC and Maryland. She founded Aging and Amazing to support older adults, caregivers, and their networks. With over a decade of experience as a clinician, public speaker, and business owner, she is passionate for older adults and caregivers. Malika has served as a consultant, psychotherapist, educator, and medical social worker. She was honored with the 2022 Aging Life Care Association Rising Star Award, and it is dedicated to ensuring that aging is a fulfilling and vibrant experience for all. And now I'll turn it over to our presenters.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Malika.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to see the chat.
Yes. And so some of you may have reviewed or viewed or participated in the estate planning webinar that I presented in October with Maryland Public Television. And so we had a lot of questions regarding aging from that webinar. And so we decided to collaborate to do this particular webinar specific to things that should be considered when aging. And I could not think of anyone better to assist in this presentation other than Malika Moore. She has, I have worked with her personally and professionally and dealing with some consideration with aging adults that I've worked with. And I think that she is a jewel. And so what we want to do here is just have a conversation between the two of us, some of the things that we see in professional practice, and give you some tips and tricks. And so let's go through our agenda. So first, we're going to discuss myths. These are myths that Malika and I see all of the time in our practice. Then we're going to cover two major items. These are the actual documents, legal documents that individuals should have in place as they age. And that is the Advanced Medical Directive and a Durable Power of Attorney. So let's go on to the myths. And so some of our viewers might not be able to read them if it's small. So I'll read the first one and maybe we can alternate and add some input about why these things are myths. So the first one, I am too young to put plans in place. The reason why this is a myth is because no one knows what the future holds. No one knows what tomorrow will bring. And my particular rule of thumb is as long as you are 18 years of age and you are legally considered an adult, where that your parents are no longer your guardians and there is no one else to make financial and medical decisions for you, there needs to be some documents in place. And that is my rule of thumb, particularly because before COVID, this actually happened to me when I was in college. This was my first experience. I was in college. I was over 18 years of age. I'm from New York. I had a severe illness. I was not able to talk. I did not have any assistance. Literally, my friends came to my dorm room, found someone with a car. They took me to the emergency room. No one contacted administration at school. They just took me directly to the emergency room because I was severely ill. They did call my mother, who again is out of state. And at that point in time, being over 18, just over 18, by the way, this was right after my 18th birthday. No one was able to make decisions. At that time, the hospital wouldn't even give my mother information about what was going on with me because they could not confirm that she was my mother. And so, as you can imagine, this was a very traumatic time. I, again, wasn't even in law school. This is my freshman year of college. And so that was my experience. That is a frequent experience. And so this is why you're never too young to have any plans in place. And so anything to offer on that one, Malika?
No, just similar. You never know when a sudden illness will strike and you need someone. It may not be your family that you want. so being able to say who you really want to say what you need to be done. So I agree with that.
The next one, my family knows what I want, so I don't need to write anything down. Right. What's your take on that, Malika?
That's funny. Well, first of all, I say this all the time. We have to be very realistic and honest. All of our families have some stuff. So when I say stuff, I mean some kind of family dynamics or something you're dealing with. Some wrap a bow around it a little bit better than others. But you have to consider all of that when you're saying my family knows what I want, so I don't need to write anything down. Just think about simple day-to-day discussions that you may not agree upon. We're talking about some serious life issues and considerations, and our values may be different from our loved ones. So really just thinking about, do they really know what's in your head, or do you know what you want more than anybody else? And do you need to get that properly put in place so you don't make assumptions that your family knows what you want, but you get exactly what you want, even if you're unable to speak for yourself?
And I will add, so what, they know what you want. That doesn't mean that's what they want for you. So what? This was actually my father-in-law's stance. He's now deceased, and he would say, "Y'all know what I want," and I would say, "Your wife knows, but she's not going to do that. So you better make sure that you tell someone else, and that you." Make sure that there's somebody in place that's really going to do what you desire to do, because just because they know does not mean that they will honor it. And so we'll talk more about that when we discuss what you should look for in selecting agents. Mm-hmm. My family will automatically handle everything. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh. I have to laugh to keep from crying. So here's the deal. What does that mean? My family, who will automatically handle everything? This statement can lead to a lot of conflict between well-intentioned people. In my experience, all family members have good intentions. They want to do what's best, but that can lead to conflict amongst individuals. And so you want to make sure you specify who you want to handle what, if not everything. Another thing, don't assume that they will. I think this is more of an assumption of an older generation, and we'll get into my heartburn about our younger generations later. But there is an older generation that did everything for their families and for their parents. There are at least two younger generations that do not adopt that philosophy. Mm-hmm. And so I am seeing in practice, without a doubt, that younger generations are saying, I'm not doing that. I don't know why. I don't know why he or she put me down on that document. I'm not doing it. And the reality is, there is no legal mechanism to make someone serve as your agent. And so make no assumptions when you're planning for aging. You need to have conversations. Mm-hmm. Anything you want to include, Malika?
No, I think you're, and let's just be honest, some can't.
Yeah. Now that I didn't even get to that.
It's not, it's just they can't. And you may be being unfair and putting this burden on them because you want to be fair. Versus them actually being able to execute what needs to be done. So you have to have almost a different mindset when you're making these type of decisions.
Okay, we're going to start early and honest, I see. Yes. So, one thing to be clear about the capacity of the people that we're talking about. You know full well who can do what and who cannot do what based on what they're doing now. And so, some of this is also having honest conversations within yourself. The next one, power of attorney means my agent can do whatever they want. I'll go ahead and answer that. That can be true, but it also can be false. Essentially, when you are developing a power of attorney, the written document, you have the ability as the principal, the decision maker, the one giving the authority away to determine the type of authority you want to give away. And so you can give away all authority to your power of attorney for them to make unlimited decisions as if you were making those decisions. You can limit that authority as well, and we'll talk about that later. But the one thing that you should know is that when you name an agent, that agent becomes a fiduciary. And they have an ethical and legal obligation to do what is in your best interest. And so we'll have a further discussion about potential conflicts of interest and elder exploitation, really, that occurs when you have fiduciaries who are really in opposition to the role that they should play. So the next one, appointing a power of attorney means I lose control of my finances and healthcare decisions.
Mm-hmm.
No, that is not true. That is a myth. So long as, at least financially, the financial power of attorney, and really healthcare as well, so long as you are able to make decisions for yourself, you extending authority to an agent does not mean that you lose your authority. Really, the only way that an individual can lose authority to make decisions for himself or herself is if there is a court decision that says that an individual lacks capacity to make decisions and therefore they will be appointed a guardian. Outside of that, you will always maintain control over your own finances and the ability to make healthcare decisions. The next question.
I want to add.
Oh, go ahead.
I want to add, Shari, that also I think it's a shift in perspective, and I know we'll get to this later, but you actually gain control when you put things in order. You're the boss, and you're saying this is what I want to be done ahead of time instead of it being the other way.
That's a really, really good perspective. I think I'm gonna steal that. I think I'm gonna take that from you. Thank you,
Shari. We got to record it.
Okay. Next, my family will always agree on my care, so I don't need to appoint someone. Malika, you see this more than me, so I'm going to let you go ahead and speak to this one.
Yeah. So just think about simple decisions. Where are we going to eat? Where are we going on vacation? Does your family always agree? Anytime in like in psychotherapy or counseling, that word always is probably not going to be true. And it could be something simple as what have I seen? I want a funeral versus a cremation versus a memorial, or maybe someone was religious growing up, but they weren't as an adult and they really don't want to do all of the ceremonies that are associated with their religion. So it's just that anytime you say always, that's going to set you up for failure. So you want to get something that's legally binding to ensure that whether you want to agree or not, here's what I said.
The next myth, I can just leave everything to be decided by the courts if necessary. So let me first say this. The reason why advanced medical directives and powers of attorney exist is because the courts do not want to be in your personal business. They don't. The court is there to be a judicial body to resolve disputes between parties, but when it comes to aging and lack of capacity in family things, the courts don't want to be in your business. They want you to resolve a lot of your own issues, especially the issues you know are going to be issues. And that's the one thing I want to be honest about. We know a lot of the pitfalls in our family structures. And so we need to begin to be honest about them and address them. And so for an advanced medical directive and a power of attorney. These documents are documents that we put in place in the event of an individual's incapacitation. And so, if there are disputes over these documents to where the medical professionals can't make a decision regarding treatment, or your financial institutions really don't know or don't have any one person in control to where the court has to get involved, it doesn't make it easier when a court gets involved, because people still have to bring the matter before the court. People still, your family members have to choose to engage in that process. I actually have a situation now where there is someone who's incapacitated in a nursing facility. I'm not sure whether or not they have any immediate family. And so the nursing facility is going to court to get guardianship of the person just to ensure that they get paid, so they can have some oversight of the individual's finances. Who wants that to happen to them? And so that is not a rare case, but it is a case where in this particular case, we simply don't know what the family unit or the family structure is to bring a real life person. But would you want someone working at an institution that is in charge of your care to also have oversight over your finances? I don't know that I would want that. I would want some checks and balances there. And so I wouldn't want to leave it up to the court. That's just my personal opinion. That's not even my professional opinion, because sometimes we can't control it. But you really don't want to leave some of these intimate decisions up to the court. Anyway, Malika on that?
Right. And the court is sometimes slow. So
I didn't even talk about that one.
So the court is sometimes slow. So you're like, I share, you could probably weigh in. Like, it could be years that things are kind of getting unfolded depending on how complex it is.
Yeah, exactly right. This is not, you're not going to get a solution within a week. You're not going to get a solution within a month. You're not, and I'm used to it because I'm used to the time involved. But when you are living everyday life, it does become something that's quite complicated. Only people with large estates need an end of life plan. I would push back on that myth to say, well, what the heck is a large estate? What are we saying? That's actually the question that I had when I began to really get into the field of estate planning over 15 years ago. I would sit with people that would talk about, high net worth individuals and large estates. And again, I'm very well learned and educated, and I'm sitting around the table and I'm whispering to other attorneys. I'm like, so what is the number? What is the number? What qualifies as a large estate? And so, yes, there is numbers that we use for tax purposes, but I would say overwhelmingly, the people who need the most planning fall well underneath that tax threshold, have some of the most complicated family setups that require planning. And so it's really it's not about the size of your estate and what you own. It's about the goals that you want to accomplish and what does aging look like for you and the resources that you may or may not have.
Yeah.
All right. And this one is in red. This is the one that kind of gets on my last nerve. If I start planning for illness, death, or disability, it will make it happen. Meaning, if I start planning, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen quickly. That is simply not true. That is simply not true. Um, Here is a truth. We are all going to leave here, and we are going to leave here without our possessions. That's truth number one.
Mhm.
We are all going to age, and some of us are going to be fortunate enough to age for longer than others. And the truth of the matter is, if you have spent your time planning your life and the life, whatever success looked like for you as a little kid, to accomplish whatever you have accomplished, to accumulate whatever you have accumulated, family members included, why not plan? Why not engage in an act of love and planning for what we know is going to happen? Not that illness is going to happen, but death is going to happen, and disability is probable. Even if you're not disabled, we all grow to need help and support. I am 41 years old. I need help and support. I've needed it from birth. And that looks different at 41 than it did at 25. And it will look different at 82 if I make it. And so, what is the plan around that? I know I'm planning. Anything you want to weigh in on that myth, Malika?
Yeah, well, just in general, I think that, myths essentially are thinking about the worst that can happen in all of these scenarios and maybe horror stories you've heard. So I just say as the presentation continues that you challenge those and maybe type in the chat a few myths that we may have missed, because I'm pretty sure this list is a lot longer than we suspect.
Okay, so we are going to move forward with some objective, but I did want to go through some of these questions. And so Cassie says, can a person with a durable power of attorney change beneficiaries of an incapacitated person? And so only if that person prior to incapacitation gave authorization to do so in the power of attorney. There was a new, at least in the state of Maryland. Oh, I did not give my disclaimer. So let me give my disclaimer now. While I am a Maryland attorney, I am not anyone's attorney that is viewing this webinar. I am just giving legal information, and I encourage everyone to go seek the legal support and advice that they may need tailored to their individual circumstances. So now that I've gotten that out the way, there was a new statutory power of attorney that came into effect October 1st, 2023. And so that particular power of attorney, a lot of great legal minds got together to draft that within the state of Maryland. And the information I'm giving is just specific to the state of Maryland. So if you're in another jurisdiction, you need to do some research about that state. But the Maryland statutory power of attorney now does permit a principal, the person who is giving authority to an agent through the power of attorney, to allow that agent to make changes to beneficiary designations, changes, and even appointing other agents. And so basically, if the document that was signed at the time that the person had capacity did not permit that, then it's a high probability that you are not able to make any changes to the beneficiaries of that person. Again, a principal can give specific authority. And if that authority wasn't given to the agent, then that agent doesn't have it. Okay. Ruth says, I have 2 children. One lives very close. Actually, Ruth, we're going to come back to this question later on in the presentation. I have 2 children. One lives very close to me. One lives out of state. However, the one that lives in another state would be better at making decisions. We're going to come back to Ruth. Okay. Let's see. If a family member becomes unable to be power of attorney, what about a lawyer or another person? What is the cost if a lawyer overseas. So, Rosalind, again, if someone is unable to serve as power of attorney, the only way another person can serve as power of attorney, lawyer or not, is if the principal initially gave authorization for that to occur. If the principal did not give authorization for that to occur, then no one else, not even a lawyer. And so when we talk about someone else being power of attorney, we're really what you're really highlighting is the possible need for a guardianship proceeding in which maybe a lawyer or another family member could be appointed. But again, a power only what is written and what is authorized by the principal in a power of attorney is what can happen. Okay. The last two questions are talking about estate planning documents, which sound more like wills and not the two documents that we're discussing here today. So I'm going to hold off on them to make sure that we stay on topic. And so the two documents that we're discussing today, again, are the advanced medical directive, and then we'll go into the durable power of attorney a little bit more. Just to reiterate that these two documents we put in place in contemplation of a disability. So the individual is still alive, the heart is beating, but there is some type of disability where that person is incapacitated. Okay. And the advanced medical directive is the document that covers healthcare decisions. The durable power of attorney is a document that covers financial decisions. And so we're moving through this a little bit quickly because we're working under the assumption that you've seen the first video, okay, which explains those things in greater detail, but we're going to keep reiterating that. So the advanced medical directive has two objectives. And the thing for you to note is that you don't have to engage both. You can do one or the other, but I do tell a lot of individuals to engage both. And so the two things that they allow you to do is to appoint a healthcare agent, which we can also call a healthcare proxy. Then it also allows you to give guidance about your treatment preferences. So telling your agent and your doctors how you want to be treated. And that is called your living will. And again, you can do one or the other. You don't have to do both, but it's highly recommended that you do both. Appoint an agent and then give guidance as to what type of medical treatment you would like. And so your healthcare agent is the one who is going to make decisions on your behalf. So if you are incapacitated, your healthcare agent is the one that your doctors and your medical professionals will go to for guidance. You can appoint a primary agent and backup agents in the event that that primary agent is ill or unable. Your healthcare agent does have authority under HIPAA to access your medical information, and your named healthcare agents only have this authority. And so some authority includes providing or withholding consent for certain medical procedures, deciding who your doctors are and who your doctors are not, deciding where you should be treated. These are major decisions of the healthcare agent and decisions that you would make also. Treatment preferences, you have a right to give information about the way in which you would want to be treated. And the power of attorney, the healthcare directive does not cover all situations. It typically covers three types of treatments or three types of conditions when death is imminent due to a terminal conditions despite life-sustaining procedures. And that could be injury, the result of a car accident, the result of a work accident, something that occurs where the doctors can do all that they can, but death is going to be imminent. You can imagine that the medical treatment that you would want under that circumstance may be different under others. The second type of condition is a condition of permanent unconsciousness, also called a persistent vegetative state, where you may have a full function of full bodily function, but there may be no brain activity, no consciousness there. In this particular condition, as long as there's nutrition and fluid, people can live a very long time. And so, but again, living a very long time with permanent unconsciousness. The idea is that medical professionals have decided that there is very little chance of recovery of consciousness. And so you can imagine your treatment may want to be different in this particular state. And then the last condition that is contemplated is end stage condition that is advanced, progressive, and incurable, and will eventually result in complete physical dependency. This could be a final stage, someone who may be in their final stage of a cancer diagnosis, someone who may have dementia or Alzheimer's. I give the example of my grandmother. She actually just passed away this past October, and she had dementia, I want to say, for my daughter's 17, so probably 16 years, the majority of my oldest daughter's life. My grandmother was lacked capacity, lacked capacity to make decisions. And so it was a progressive illness. And so her treatment did change, and what she desired for her treatment did change over time. You can imagine, again, someone can be in that state for a number of years. So what type of treatment would you want in that condition? Do you have anything to add to any of the advanced medical directive information?
Yeah, yes, you mentioned capacity. That I recommend like looking up in your state, what it means, what's needed to determine whether or not you lack capacity. Just because you have a diagnosis of dementia does not mean that you're unable to make decisions. For example, here in Maryland, they require a physician and a secondary, either a nurse, a clinical social worker, to search to say that you lack capacity. So that's something to consider, because sometimes the assumption that I see as a care manager is that, oh, they have dementia, they can't make decisions, or oh, they have dementia, they can't drive. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes people come to us with legal documents and it's like, oh, okay, well, it says that when I lack capacity, where do you have any proof that the person lacks capacity? Like, we need that alongside this. Yeah.
Yes. And that is the one. That's why I give the example of my grandmother with an end stage condition, because yes, she had a diagnosis for a very long time. But we as a family didn't recognize that she truly lacked capacity until we all had a meeting in the ER. And the doctor said, listen, we're here. We're at this moment. As a family, we didn't recognize that she lacked capacity because she knew how to engage us regularly. So it didn't seem abnormal for us. And so you definitely want to look into what that means for wherever you may be. And so this goes into a little bit into a conversation about long-term care planning. Individuals are aging and living longer. Most of us will need support, but we may not have issues of capacity. We just need support as we age. What does that look like? I like to tell prospective clients or clients, make a list, literally take a piece of paper and write down, who do you have and what do you have? So who do you have are the people that you know are going to help support you as you age. And what do you have are the resources that you may have to pay for it. If you don't have the people, what are your resources? Because it needs to be clear, the resources that you have, so you know where the voids are. And so we have insurance, we have retirement, we have government funded care such as Medicare, which is federally funded insurance, Medicaid, which is state funded insurance, and then we have the Department of Veteran Affairs to all of our great veterans who have served us. That is also a resource for some long-term care support. But I don't come with the answers. Malika may have more answers and resources than I do. I just know that people need to start thinking about these things before they get to my office. And Malika is the one to help you think about these things.
Right. Exactly. And let's not forget our lovely private pay resources.
Our private pay. And can you explain what that is, Malika?
So there are various resources when you're thinking about planning around aging and all of these things. So you have your Office on Aging in your state that you always want to check in and see what's available to you. But also you have private pay resources, because you might be caught in the middle where you're not necessarily classified as low income, you're not exactly wealthy, but you're right in the middle where you may not qualify for these benefits. So now you're talking private pay. That could be home care, private pay care management services help you coordinate. So I know Shari does a wonderful job on this, especially with the referrals we get from her and painting a clear financial picture so you know what to do, because unfortunately that guides a lot of like what options are available. That's just how our healthcare system is set up, and we know with the baby boomers that we're going to have even more. Like this is a thing, it's here, and so we need dedicated and people who are know what they're talking about to guide you in the right direction.
Yes. So let's go to, before we go to our next section, I want to answer some more questions. So David Perkins asks, are we talking about the most form? And so he asked that question when we were talking about advanced medical directives. Do you want to go ahead and explain what that form is?
I do. I got excited about that question. I audit most. So the most is actually an order. So it's not an advanced directive. And every time I'm going over this with some of the social workers in the nursing homes, it gets confused sometimes. So people think that an advanced directive and a most are the same thing. So a most is an order from a doctor that outlines whether you want DNR, DNI.
Wait a minute. Let's you start throwing out letters now. DNR stands for
do not resuscitate. So meaning you want CPR, or do not intubate, that you don't want intubation. Full code means you want CPR. So anytime you go into Maryland, you go into a hospital, because that's the acronym for ours. You go into a hospital, you go into a nursing home, they're going to want you to complete a most. So if something happens to you while they're in the nursing home and you cold, they know what to do. If your heart stops, you stop breathing. We love it when people saw attorneys and they have an advanced directive, because you can say, hey, I don't want to do the most. I want you to follow what I've written in my advanced directive that addresses all of these things and upload it to my care profile. So it's two different things. Think of the most as an order that's filled out by a doctor, and then your advanced directive is a more comprehensive document. And I'll let Shari take it from there to explain.
So I just realized that everyone may not be able to see these questions. So we're saying most, MOLST, and that stands for Maryland Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatment. Okay, because I just realized, I was like, everyone probably doesn't even know what we're saying. And so I wanted to spell that out. That's what that form is. Malika did a great job at expressing what it does. I think the most important thing, I have not seen most documents or most forms transfer from institution to institution. And so that's why it's not completely sufficient, because it's really for a particular hospital or for a particular treatment center. And so you want to make sure that you have an advanced medical directive. If you want to have the most form, fine, but you definitely want to have an advanced medical directive, which is the more comprehensive document. And let's see what other questions we have here about advanced medical directive. Rhonda asks, how can I encourage older family members to fill out an advanced medical directive or have an estate plan? And I love this question. And I don't know if we'll have the same answer, Malika. We didn't study for this presentation, by the way. We wanted it to be raw. My thought is that people are people. And while you can encourage and you can support and you can speak kindly or even rough to say, I don't want to deal with your nonsense, so I need you to do this now. The reality is, and the biggest heartache that I see when I have the second generation or children contact me, is that there isn't anything you can do. If that adult, older or not, does not want to complete an advanced medical directive or does not want to engage in estate planning, there isn't anything you can do but buckle up and brace yourself for what can come. So you can put your mask on first, as they tell you when you get on any airplane, and make sure that you engage in a process of estate planning so that you know what is involved and you know what essentially you would be preparing for. Particularly, Rhonda, the only people who ask these questions are the people who think that all of the weight and the pressure of the work is going to fall on them. The people who don't think it's going to fall on them, they don't care. They don't ask the questions. Only the people who say, you know what, it's going to be my responsibility in the end, that you're the only ones that ask it. And I hate to tell you, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you cannot make people engage in processes that they don't want. All you can do is receive the education about it, to have continue conversations to massage them to that place. But ultimately, I have sat with adults, I have explained everything thoroughly. I'm pretty clear in my communication. And I have had adults look me straight in my face and say, I'm not doing it. And I say, well, you're making an informed choice. And I'm out of the door. And so that's my take on it from a legal perspective. Malika may have another approach that's a better answer.
Yeah. So, Rhonda, I do want to say this. It may be worth, and I believe consulting, because they do have things like the surrogate decision making forms and things like that. So finding out, are you next in line if they decide not, or by default, are you next in line? It may be good to explore that. But to answer your question a bit further, I have a whole slide on that where we can talk about some strategies to get people who may be resistant to putting these documents in place.
Okay, let's move on to the next slide, which is a durable power of attorney. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because I went through this a bit much at the beginning when we talked about some of the myths. What I do want to explain is the difference between just a general power of attorney that is in a writing that grants the authority to an agent to act on the principal's behalf. The term durable is important here is because durable means that that authority surpasses a person's incapacity. And that is what makes the power of attorney an estate planning tool, meaning that it is the authority that a principal gives an agent is going to surpass that principal's ability to make decisions. And that's what we want, because if a power of attorney isn't durable, then that means when the principal is no longer able to make decisions, no one else can make decisions for them. And so we really want the power of attorney to be durable. Since we're here at power of attorneys, I do want to go, I think there were a couple of questions related to power of attorney. June says, I have two sons. Is there a problem with having both? Is there a problem with both of them being power of attorney or healthcare attorney? June, I would say to you, when you ask both of them to do something, do they both collaborate and work together to actually execute that, or do they fight? Does one acquiesce to the other? Does one rise to respond before the other? I would ask you in real life, in real time, why would you want this to occur? One thing that Malika said earlier on, and I'm going to reiterate, selecting agents is not about fairness. This is not about, I want to be kind and I want to be fair, and I don't want one to feel away. This is not what it's about. The question that you need to ask yourself is whether or not they are going to work together to accomplish the goal, or whether or not you want them to work together, because you could have them work severally, which means you could have them work separately, apart from one another, and now you have two people at the same time having the ability to make financial decisions and medical decisions for you. Well, now you confuse everybody. Who does your doctors listen to in that case? And what if both of them decided to go purchase a home for you in Florida at the same time? So when you're thinking about who your power of attorney is going to be, and you have multiple people, which is a blessing to have multiple people that you want to identify, think about the functionality of it. How do they actually function now? When you ask both of your sons to go to the grocery store, to pass you the remote, to call a doctor, whatever, who actually responds? I can tell you both of them don't respond in the same way. It's not natural. It's not the natural way of being, especially if they're not twins. Birth order, people act different just based on birth order. So I would, to answer your question, I would ask you about 7 more questions, June. Anything else to add?
Oh, well, Shari, I think both of our nightmare is when it's too many people all listed, and one is not like a contingency, or it's a nightmare, because it's just a tug of war, and it's almost like it's better if they had not created the document, because we're probably going to end up going to court because no one can agree. So it's counterproductive at what you've tried to do in your planning. And like I mentioned earlier, keeping control, remaining your own boss.
So here are some hot spots when there isn't fully thought out planning. I don't want to say improper planning. I like to say that when I see documents, I'm like, y'all didn't really think about this. Conflicts of interest. I think the example with June and her 2 sons, are there inherent conflicts of interest that may exist, to naming one over the other? Think about your children. Think about any of the agents that you would select. Is there something that may be a conflict? What does a conflict look like? A conflict looks like, perfect example, I have a lot of people who come to me and they have a great time sitting in my office, and they say, can I name you as my agent? And I say, no, this is a conflict of interest. My job here is to advise you. I can't advise you and also be the decision maker, because my advice may be biased from that. It doesn't work. So think about that. Financial exploitation. I see way too many older individuals knowingly being exploited by their loved ones getting credit cards in their elder's name, loans, misappropriating funds because I had to rob Peter to pay Paul, and they're using their elders to really, just support them in ways that the elders don't agree. And because of the relationship, that elder is not willing to report, that elder is not willing to stand up. It is a big issue. And my heart just breaks. Improper legal documents, meaning that people are doing things on their own and they're not executing their documents the right way. And it looks fraudulent. So no professional or financial institution will accept it. Conservatorship is when a court appoints someone in charge of your finances. It could be a temporary disability or some need for support. It is not guardianship, because you maintain autonomy in other areas to make decisions for yourself, but financially someone else is made a conservator. Guardianship is where the there is no documents in place, and the financial matters must move forward. Even care matters must move forward. And so the courts are sought to appoint a guardian of person, which is responsible for physical decisions regarding the physical body, and then a guardian of property, which is a guardian of your finances. And so those are some hot spots. Any other hot spots you want to bring up, Malika?
I think that's pretty comprehensive.
Okay. And how do you start the conversation? So we have a lot of questions that I didn't get to because they really go to this. How do we get there with resolving selecting agents and determining who to choose?
Absolutely. So I'm going to tag along with what Shari said. Some people just won't do it. Like, you can give them all of the information, you can try all these strategies, and they just won't do it. So in turn, I just say, find out how to equip yourself. But those who are trying to, how do I start this conversation? What's in it for them? If you think about our day to day, we're thinking about what's in it for you. Why did you get up and go to work? Why did you take your medication? Why did you pick this car, this route, or this job? So what's in it for them? For someone, it may be, I don't want Stacy handling my affairs. Well, if you don't do that, Stacy next in line, or I want to stay independent. I want to if independence is that person's goal, like, I want this to be done. And that, okay, if we get these documents done, here's your key, even if you're not unable to make decisions for yourself. So think about that person. I know each of you are either that person or you're that person, you have them in mind right now as you're watching. So think about what's their buy-in. What's going to get them to even open this door where it'll say, oh, you know what? You might have a point. And it may be the most ridiculous thing. It may be that they want their grandchildren to be taken care of. So you're not going to start the conversation badgering them about the facts. You're going to say, well, what about the grandchildren? You really said that this was a goal. And, oh, yeah, that is important to me. So now you've opened the door. Let's talk about this. Here are some things that you need to do, because what's in it for them is not what's in it for you. Identify mutual goals. And you may have the mutual goal of, hey, I want you to have everything the way you want it. I want your resources to go where you want. Because like Shari said, wealth is subjective, and you worked hard for whatever you have. So find something that you can both talk on, especially if you find that the conversation is getting tense. You want to be able to slow it down, back it up, and what's some things that you can both decide to maybe bring that conversation up later. Focus on your loved one's wishes. We all have an idea of how things should go and how life should be, but what does your loved one say? You might find it really important for them to have their service at this church they grew up in, and they just may look, I don't care about that. Or I don't care about this house, but I care about that. So what are their wishes? Because sometimes you'll turn people totally and completely off if you're telling them what you think should be done, instead of taking a minute back and saying, what are your wishes? Then that's going to help you circle back to number one, which is what's in it for them. So you can get around another way to possibly have this conversation. Use I statements. Instead of saying, when you phrase something, if you feel that way, you feel that way. Don't assume they feel that way. So use I statements to take ownership of your statements. And I didn't put this in the slide, but I'm going to throw it in for free. When you're asking questions, try to stay away from the word why. They teach us this when we become psychotherapists. Why just has a layer of judgment. Why would you want to appoint that person as your healthcare agent versus what makes you want to appoint Sarah as your healthcare agent? It gives that open of, hey, I really want to know, instead of that layer of judgment. And take breaks. This is a lot of information. And think about it. When you start to plan your own documents and affairs, it can be a very emotional process. If you start thinking about your own demise and who's going to get this and what's going to happen, a lot of grief and emotions may stir up. So don't just go full-fledged in it. That comes to knowing the person. Some personalities are like, slam me, give me all the information now so we can get it done. But others, you may be bringing this up 2-3 times a year till it gets done. So be able to go at your own pace, but primarily that person's pace with the goal of getting it done. So these are just a few tips. Shari, you have anything to add to that?
Be honest. If you go to my website, sharifleming.com, on a resources tab at the bottom of the page, I developed a difficult discussion guide to really encourage families to have what I see as difficult discussions. Because they're only difficult because no one wants to tell the truth. I just happen to come from a very loud and a very truth-telling, rude, if some people would call us, family. We just tell it like it is to everyone, and we cry and we get mad and then we come back and apologize. But in practice, I see a lot of families just don't talk. They just don't have conversation, and then they're not honest about how they may feel, even when they're having those conversations. And so when having the conversation, if you're not going to be honest about how you feel, and even to say, I don't know why I feel that way, but I feel that way nonetheless, be honest, because you're not going to get anywhere if you're not authentic about your feelings. And that goes for both sides. That goes for the aging. Well, we're all aging. So that goes for, I call the first generation and the second generation. And so I want to get into some of the questions. And let me first say, some of these questions I'm not going to answer because they're really about the last will and testament. This particular presentation is about some of the things you should consider when aging and possibly preparing for a possible disability. So I'm not going to get to all of them. I'm focusing on the ones related to this presentation. Wesley has the best question. How do I set up an advance directive? If you go to the Office of the Attorney General's website for the state of Maryland, you can pull off the Maryland Advanced Medical Directive form. Go to the government website because they'll have the most updated one. Don't just Google it. Go to the Maryland Office of the Attorney General's website and you can pull off the Maryland Advanced Medical Directive. It's free because public policy is that the state of Maryland does not want to be in your medical decisions. The courts do not want to sit and make medical decisions for you. So it is free. Make sure you read it and read the directions. I find that the vast majority of the people pull it off, fill it out, and don't even read it, which means that it doesn't serve you if you actually don't read and understand what's in it. Barbara, as well as I believe Ruth, asks a similar question, and it's regarding agents who may be in another state. Or having a power of attorney or advanced medical directive that may be within assigned in another state. And so if you name an out-of-state agent, then that agent does have the same authority as if your agent was in the state of Maryland. So you can name an out-of-state agent. As a practical measure, however, you need to have conversations with that agent about how they will handle certain things, because there are some things you can only do in person. Thankful now we live in a digital world, and there are a lot of encryption and things that can happen when people are working out of state, but I have seen it become a little bit complicated in some instances, but it is possible. And if you do have an advanced medical directive or a power of attorney that's drafted in another state, let's say you once resided someplace else, so long as that document was executed properly under the laws of that state, the state of Maryland will accept it. Okay, let's see. How often do estate planning documents need to be updated? As often as you need to update them. If your agent is ill or your agent dies, you need to update your documents. So the frequency really depends on how much life has changed. Are the documents still applicable to what you have? So a lot of the questions here are not about not about advanced medical directives, not about powers of attorney. They are really about what happens upon transition, and that is when someone passes away. I see a lot of question about decedent's assets, and so we're not going to get into those. Harvey asks, will you discuss the importance of signature authority on bank accounts? And I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure what you meant by that question, Harvey, but essentially, if someone is appointed agent within your power of attorney, they will have authority to access your accounts in the way specified by that document. So, Harvey, I don't know, I don't understand your question, where you were going with that question. To be able to fully answer. But we're 1 minute away from our conclusion of this. Malika, do you have any last words that you want to share with the audience today?
I do. I just want to say, and all in all, find you an ally, because you may not be the right person at all to have this conversation with you. And another thing is, at minimum, if you prepare these documents, you give your family, your loved one, whoever they are, time to grieve instead of trying to figure out all of these other things. So just plan, and it gives you the power and control that you want right now.
I would agree. And if you are the second generation, if you are the person that's viewing this and you're trying to plan for a parent, you're trying to plan for an elder, you're trying to plan against family conflict. And I don't say this jokingly. If you don't have a therapist, get one because it is not the execution of a lot of things that I find that people have trouble with. It is accepting what is. I am kind of hamstrung and my hands are tied when trying to assist people with legal matters because they have an inability to accept what is, and an inability to accept that they may not be in control of a situation, an inability to accept that their loved ones did not do what they thought they should have done, or that they did not plan, or maybe they planned and it wasn't the way you thought they should have planned. A lot of things are outside of our control. It's really about identifying those things that are outside of your control and accepting them to be able to pivot and move forward. And so that's all I have to share. It was a pleasure. Our contact information is available on the screen. If you need to reach out to us for our services, I will give you the caveat. Please don't think that you're going to email us and ask us direct questions that were not answered here, because we're not going to answer them. Okay? There will be some more information coming from Maryland Public Television as a way for us to maybe funnel and bring some responses to these questions. But please, I just want to warn you, I don't want to wake up to an inbox of 50 questions that I have to delete. Okay? Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Shari and Malika. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you again to everyone for joining us this evening. Keep a lookout for an email containing the link that will be sent out within the next week, and it will be available via YouTube. Have a great night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.